want a call to London, please. Whitehall. 1212. Scotland Yard. Oh, can you help me, please? I'm trying to find Chief Inspector Rose. Ex-Chief Inspector Charles Rose.
First thing, of course, is to decide upon a title. Memoirs, recollections, reminiscences. What would you say was the kind of title that sells? Something strong and simple, like a great detective's casebook, or something swingingly modern, like Up the Yard?
Offhand, I'd say neither.
What about Set a Thief?
John, your fire.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to that.
Well, perhaps not. Think what an expert we have ready to hand when we come to that chapter.
He'll be in the book.
I shall tell all my publisher insists. The 100 murder mysteries I've solved.
Are you boasting? I've read the files.
And the 1,000 I've failed to solve.
You don't understand. I just have to get hold of him. Yes, I know he's retired. I read about that. I don't know. They put me onto your extension. They thought you could help. Yes, it's important. It's very important. Name? Flinders. Peter. Peter Flinders. No, don't ring me back. I'll hold on. But you must. Please, please.
Are we going to work, or aren't we?
I am allowed a brief after-lunch nap.
The contract says delivery of the completed manuscript within 3 months.
What do they want? 80,000 words?
About.
Your shorthand rate is?
160.
Therefore, if I talk non-stop, we shall finish the whole thing by 11 o'clock tonight, nicely in time for a late supper and a bottle of champagne.
Provided that we start now.
We are about to start now.
Mr. Rose's secretary? Who's that speaking, please? Oh, would you hold on? I'll see if he's awake. It's Inspector Shanks, Scotland Yard.
Hello, Harry. Rose here. Peter Flinders. Never heard of him. Well, be a good chap and tell him I've disappeared off the face of the earth. No, not under any circumstances. I have 80,000 words to dictate between now and bedtime, and I cannot possibly be disturbed. Thank you. Bye. Someone on the other line called Peter Flinders. Peter Flinders. Does that remind me of something?
Exchange. Can I have directory inquiries, please? London.
Hello, Lucius. I didn't know you were up.
Oh, I was just looking at some things. Hello? Yes. No. No, it wasn't. No. You've made a mistake. It was the wrong number.
Lucius, I think you better go back to bed.
Yes. On second thought, I think I'll get dressed and go out for a walk.
No, dear, no. You're not well enough yet to leave the house.
With green peas.
Dainty, garden fresh?
Hand-picked.
Of course. What do you want to drink with it?
I think a bottle of champagne.
Champagne does not go with duck.
Champagne goes with anything.
Instruction to Miss Lamb. You are not entitled to champagne.
Miss Lamb is a bossy, but beautiful girl who I'm sure would like a glass of champagne with her meal.
He did no work at all this afternoon.
Shameful.
He spent the entire time trying to think what the name Peter Flinders reminded him of.
Disgraceful.
And he couldn't even do that.
Do you like being in the third person?
Two maiden aunts of mine died in rapid succession, poor dears, leaving me more than enough to live on. I retire from the police hoping for a life of elegance and ease, and what do I get?
Elegance and ease.
Publishers and press barons descend upon me.
You know Nigel Chinnery is coming to dinner tomorrow.
Let him come.
Bringing the advance payment from the Sunday World contract.
How much?
5,000.
I shall make him welcome.
He'll be very cross when we tell him that you haven't yet written one word.
He will realize, of course, that I'm starting tomorrow, or the next day.
Nigel Chinnery is a publisher and a businessman.
Nigel Chinnery is the most charming, understanding fellow in the world.
Hello. What? Yes. Who? What? Look, hang on a minute, hang on. What the hell's the idea of ringing me at 4 o'clock in the morning?
Well, please, don't hang up. It's the only time I could ring you. They all think I'm still asleep. Do forgive me, it's very important. I got your number from Who's Who. I'm in the village, in a call box. I couldn't use a phone in the house, and the museum's locked up at night, and I daren't use the other one. Mr. Chinnery? Mr. Chinnery, are you there?
Are you mad or something? Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you my name, but I've got to find Chief Inspector Rose. I tried Scotland Yard, they wouldn't help me, but you're his publisher, aren't you? Well, then, you must have his address. I read about it in the papers. He's writing a book and you're going to publish it. Please, please, Mr. Chinnery, tell me where I can find him.
Oh, go to... Oh, heavens above. Oh.
"11 o'clock.
Good. John brought the coffee.
Not yet. Shall we start?
Start what?
Chapter 1, paragraph 1.
What you mean?
Begin at the beginning.
And go on.
Until you get to the end.
Oh, well, let me see. When was I born?
Shall we jump to your career as a policeman?
Ah, what a career it was. I seem to remember.
Yes, I know it was very interesting. Now, your first case.
The nice thing about Nigel Chinnery is that he neither pesters nor harries me. He protects me.
And do you need protection?
From my past. No, I feel a certain reluctance. Let's leave it for today.
Nothing is going to protect you from your past.
I'm afraid you're right. You know, the trouble about being a policeman is that no case is ever entirely closed.
Coffee.
Ah.
And time for play school.
All right, then. Keep following me about. I don't mind. That's what I want. You don't know what I want, do you? Yet you always knew what Father wanted. How did you know? How did he explain it to you? And how did he explain? I'm not going to try. All I want is for you to come a little closer. In a moment. This is my big chance, you see. Mother's in the kitchen garden, well out of sight. The others have all gone off. It's just us. And you can't hear a word I say, can you? So I'll have to make signs. Come here, Ali. Closer. Closer.
This looks very good, John. What is it?
Old English trifle, sir. Basic Robert Carey with a couple of ideas from Len Dayton.
How happy I could be with both. John to cook and clean for me as only a man can.
Thank you, sir.
And Miss Lamb to take down the story of my life to 160 words a minute as only a woman can.
More wine, Miss Lamb.
Thank you.
Miss Lamb, it's charming, of course, but isn't it rather formal?
Miss Lamb's only been with us for a fortnight.
We don't like to presume.
In a few days, a week perhaps.
My name is Drusilla.
That'll take me at least a month.
I hope longer.
As I was saying, I'm a very happy man. Thanks to these two, peace, perfect peace.
You know, you should thank me, too. I've saved you from being disturbed.
Oh, how?
A maniac rang me at 4 o'clock this morning demanding to know who you were.
Maniac.
Yes, from a call box somewhere in the wilds.
I know a number of maniacs. Which one was this?
I wouldn't give his name. He just kept insisting that he must get hold of you.
At 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, yes, that was the maddest thing of all. And let me see, he could only ring when everyone else was asleep, but the museum was locked at night.
Museum?
Yes.
You sure he said museum?
Well, quite certain. I mean, it's so absurd, I assumed I must have dreamt it. You know, this is really most awfully good.
So that's what Peter Flinders reminds me of.
I beg your pardon?
The reverse, Flinders Petrie, the great archaeologist. The kind of thing he would remember. Museum, yes, of course they've got a museum. The name of the man who telephoned you was Lucius Prentice, son of Sir Gilbert.
Also a great archaeologist.
Who died 2 years ago.
Was murdered.
By a person or persons unknown.
You were on the case?
It was one of my failures. One of my better failures. Drusilla, do you think you could find me the file?
Yes, of course.
Sir Gilbert was stabbed to death in his own museum with a replica of a Roman centurion's sword. Lady Prentice and Lucius had been to dinner with Sir Gilbert's assistant and his wife, and the four of them returned together and found Sir Gilbert dead.
No clues?
Nothing. And he had not an enemy in the world.
It couldn't have been suicide.
No, he was stabbed with far more force than he could have possibly used against himself. And anyway, why should he commit suicide at the height of his career? The very moment when he'd been offered the most noble distinction, the Order of Merit.
So you drew a complete blank?
Yes, well, there was some one person who might have helped us, and that was his Arab servant, Ali, who was in the main house at the time. Totally above suspicion. He'd been with Sir Gilbert for 30 years, worshipped him like a god. He might have heard something.
But he didn't.
But he couldn't. He's deaf and dumb.
Which particular section do you want?
Notes on my talks with Lucius. It may give me some idea as to why... As to why he's burning to see me.
I think I should break in at this point. While I was adding the last touches to the Old English trifle, I listened to the news.
Yes.
Lucius may be burning, but he won't see you. He crashed his car this morning, killed himself.
Crashed his car?
Down a hill, over a bank, into a tree.
By himself?
I gathered all by himself.
I shall not be starting my memoirs tomorrow morning. I shall be calling on Lady Prentice to offer my condolences.
It's very kind of you to come, Chief Inspector, or should I call you Mr. Rose now?
I'd prefer it.
You do remember James and Ursula Ransom, of course?
Of course.
We last met on another sad occasion.
Indeed.
James has taken over Gilbert's work, and Ursula helps him manage the house. And Oh, I was going to say Lucius.
I do understand. I myself was deeply shocked at the news of Lucius's death.
Thank you.
So shocked I could hardly believe it,
Yes.
which is why I came.
I suppose you were in the neighborhood?
Oh, no.
Or passing somewhere nearby?
No, I came specially.
That's extremely good of you.
Not at all. As I say, the news of his death startled me.
Startled?
Surprised. And more than surprised.
You may perhaps know the hill. It's terribly steep.
Yes, I inspected it on my way here.
I imagine he was going too fast. Couldn't take the bend.
From the tire marks, that is what it looks like.
Looks like.
Are you still a policeman?
No.
Then what are you doing? Questioning us?
Lady Prentice, I haven't asked a single question.
I think we should tell you. Forgive me for mentioning it, Flora. Lucius had been far from well for quite a long time. Ever since his father's death.
As I remember, he seemed on the edge of a breakdown.
He adored his father so.
His recovery had been very slow. He'd hardly been outside this house for the last 2 years. This was the first time he'd driven a car
In 2 years, and he was out of practice. And it was all my fault, really. I should have realized that he...
I'll leave you.
Goodbye, Mr. Rose, and thank you so much for calling.
May I call again later in the day?
Why?
I'm a private person. You don't have to receive me or talk to me unless you wish. If I should ask you any questions, you don't have to answer them.
I'd rather be left alone.
2 years ago, I had many conversations with your son, and I made very careful note of everything he said, even things that seemed irrelevant. And one of those notes read as follows. I'm absolutely hopeless at anything mechanical. I've never even learned to drive a car. Good day to you.
Ursula!
You spoiled their lunch for them.
Well, I certainly shan't let them spoil mine. I think 3:30 for our call, which will give me time for a nap, and them time to concoct an elaborate story.
Why do you want it elaborate?
Fun.
You've got funny ideas of fun.
And the more elaborate a story, the more easily it breaks down.
And there's nothing you like better than dragging a gory secret into the light of day.
Lucius Prentice was a decent, honorable man. It seems he wanted my help. The least I can do is to try and find out how he died.
I am put down.
Good.
I'd be even more put down if I thought that was your only motive.
I would also like to find out how Lucius's father died.
Because you failed 2 years ago.
Yes.
Why did you call it one of your better failures?
Since you press me, I think I will have another slice of chicken.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I told Arlie to bring you in here because...
Oh, yes, of course, you don't know John Halifax, James Ransom.
How do you do? Because Lady Prentice is really not in a fit state. Now, may I offer you tea?
Thank you. A sign language, invented by Sir Gilbert, I think.
He and Arlie were together for so many years. They used to hold quite complex conversations. I can manage only simple messages.
Like 2 with, 1 without.
Yes. I had hoped to see you alone.
Mr. Halifax is in my confidence.
In that case.
Thank you.
The tragedy of Sir Gilbert's death had a tremendous effect on all our lives. He was the center of our world, he and his work. We'd all been with him on his expeditions. We'd all been very close to him for at least 20 years. Except my wife, of course, who joined our circle more recently. And it was almost doubly shattering because only the day before his death, he received a letter inviting him to become a member of the Order of Merit.
The noblest honor that the sovereign can bestow.
It was what we'd always hoped for.
And the letter remained unanswered on his desk.
I think the shock of the whole thing came very close to unbalancing our minds. I think, in fact, it did unbalance Lucius.
Drove him out of his mind.
Yes.
Why him more than anyone else?
There are some answers I prefer to leave to your imagination.
Did you know that Lucius had been trying to get in touch with me these last few days?
No.
Do you know what it was he wanted to tell me?
I think he wanted to tell you the truth. At last.
2 years ago, in my conversations with Lucius, I got the impression that he felt responsible for his father's death.
Yes.
Also the impression that all was not well between father and son.
Yes?
Shall I imagine rivalry? Professional jealousy?
Lucius was a very considerable archaeologist, but of course not in the same class as Sir Gilbert.
Shall I go so far as to imagine hatred?
That night, Ursula and I came back to the house with Lady Prentice and Lucius. And Lucius went to fetch his father. We'd seen the light on, knew he was working in here. Time passed. We wondered what had happened. So we went to find out. And we found Lucius staring at his father's dead body. No, not that one, but one very like it.
Thank you for sparing on my imagination. That is not quite the story I heard 2 years ago.
Lucius is dead. Some kind of justice has been done. It may not be your kind of justice.
I have no particular kind.
I'm saying there's been enough damage. And in the end, it's cancelled itself out.
I'm sure you're right. We'll have our cup of tea and go.
Thank you.
Can I ask a stupid question? How does a man, out of his mind, can't drive a car, all by himself, get to the top of a hill 1.5 miles away?
Yes, that is the point.
Well, I can only tell you what I know. We have 2 cars here. I gone off in one of them to London. My wife went out shopping in the other one.
Shopping?
Ursula buys all the food for the house.
Ah, I see.
Now, she came back, parked the car outside the door. And then, after a time, she heard the engine, looked out the window and saw the car disappearing down the drive. Now, don't ask me how Lucius got to the top of that hill. But he did it, somehow.
Tea? How nice.
And do you think he was mad?
Ali was here with him just beforehand. Lucius attacked him, laid him out.
Laid him out.
What with? I gather Lucius wasn't exactly a Goliath. What did he lay him out with?
This.
What is it?
A statuette of the goddess Isis. We found it on our last dig in Syria.
In a Roman camp?
Yes.
Oh, yes, of course, the Isaac worship, Sir Gilbert's great subject. And Lucius broke this over Ali's head.
Yes.
What date do you give it?
Late 1st century A.D.
May I take it away with me?
Why?
Just for a few days.
Well, it's extremely valuable,
I
even
should
broken.
be very careful with it.
Elaborate.
Unconvincing. He didn't justify the coincidences.
I don't believe in coincidences, do you?
Only in consequences.
Coincidence 1. The old man was killed the day after he was offered the Order of Merit, with the letter still unanswered.
Yes, the slight time lag is interesting.
Coincidence 2. Lucius is killed the day after he starts trying to contact you.
That is coincidence 3.
What's coincidence 2 then?
Lucius started trying to contact me the day after this big splash in the Sunday World, saying I'm writing my memoir.
Shall we keep personal vanity out of this?
Lucius wanted to tell me something he daren't tell me while I was still a policeman. Ah, well, we shall find out.
Are we going there again tomorrow?
You are. I'm not.
What are you going to do?
Wait for visitors. How long does the drive take? An hour?
For me, more for others.
About 12 tomorrow morning. Lady Prentice, don't you think?
I'm so sorry. He's gone out for a walk. Was he expecting you?
No, I just thought I'd call.
But he did say he'd be back by 12. Would you like to wait?
Please.
I would offer you coffee, but I'm afraid I'm hopeless at making it, and the servant's gone off somewhere.
If I could just sit here.
Of course. You will excuse me. I have things to do.
Yes. Have you been with Mr. Rose long?
No.
You weren't with him at Scotland Yard?
No.
You do know, of course, about my son.
Yes.
Mr. Rose tells me that 2 years ago, he had some long conversations with my son. He wrote them all down.
Yes.
I wondered if I might see
See?
what he wrote.
Oh, no.
It's only that I was his mother, and I treasure anything that would remind me of him.
I'm sorry.
If I could just read, Lily.
Lady
As
Princess.
I'm waiting.
Drusilla!
Mrs. Ransom, forgive my coming
Who
in
are
this way.
you?
I talked to your husband yesterday with Mr. Rose.
Well, my husband isn't here now.
That's why I came.
I can't tell you anything.
Just one small thing, Mrs. Ransom.
What?
You do all the shopping for the household?
Yes,
Where? In Petersfield.
yes.
Could you tell me which shops you use? Butcher and so forth?
Why?
I want to check on what food you bought the day Lucius died. Unless you'd like to give me the list yourself. I mean, it's only 3 days ago, you're bound to remember. So are they. The butcher and so forth. And, of course, what food you bought the next day. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ransom, but you do see the point of it, don't you?
My particular regret is that I didn't hear what James told you.
He gave me an explanation of the whole affair.
Oh.
Of Lucius's death and your husband's.
What sort of explanation?
A very convincing one.
Well, may I hear what it was?
Lady Princess, if you don't already know, heaven forbid that I should distress you by telling you.
Did he tell you that Lucius killed his father?
Yes.
That's a lie.
What possible reason could James Ransom have for lying to me?
Because he hated Lucius.
Why?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, yes, when we all came in that evening, there was Gilbert lying on the floor dead and Lucius standing, staring at him. But Lucius couldn't have killed him. He was dead when Lucius arrived. Lucius just couldn't have done it.
I agree with you.
It just wasn't in his character.
I agree with you again.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Rose.
But Ransom told me a story that explained everything. Lady Prentice, your story explains nothing.
Well, I just can't explain. James is clever enough to invent explanations.
And put the blame where he wants the blame to lie.
Yes, he hated Lucius because Lucius was Gilbert's son. And James wanted to be the next great man, the next knight, the next man
And
to take...
because?
And because he could see that his wife was in love with Lucius.
So I am to forget Ransom's story.
Yes.
And the mystery must remain unsolved. Sir Gilbert was killed by an unknown assassin for an unknown reason.
Yes.
Thank you, Lady Prentice, for what you've told me.
Mr. Rose, I've lost my husband and my son. And I couldn't bear for anybody to think badly of him.
I understand.
Thank you.
I wonder if you could do something for me. Take this statuette away with you.
Yes, of course.
I don't need it any longer. I think we'll wrap it up in something. Drusilla, have you got anything we could use for wrapping this?
Brown paper and string.
Carrier bag. I know where there's a carrier bag. I shan't be a moment.
If Mr. Rose agrees to your reading his notes...
Oh, another time, perhaps. I have to go.
You do see, I can't do anything without his permission.
I really am most sorry. It was unforgivably clumsy of me. I was just putting it in the bag, and you see there's a stone floor in the kitchen. I do hope it's possible to repair it.
There is no stone floor in this house.
If an ardent archaeologist can break a statuette of Isis from the 1st century A.D., so can I.
can't possibly know.
What are we going to do?
Exactly what we have been doing. We can't change our tactics now.
You'll go on saying that Lucius killed his father?
Yes, and you go on denying it?
It was an unknown assassin.
Yes.
Good afternoon, John. How do you like it?
I always describe you as an elderly dandy.
Premature. I hope to grow into one. Success.
The things she bought the day Lucius died, the things she bought the next day.
And the lists are,
Almost identical.
but of course, poor Mrs. Ransom.
Flora said you were looking for me.
If anyone comes to this house asking any more questions, you know nothing beyond what we've already told them. You hear?
Yes.
Sir Gilbert's death, nothing.
And Lucius's death?
You saw the car disappearing down the drive. Apart from that, nothing.
I don't believe that.
What was that? Someone's been here already, while I was out.
He comes back again. I shall tell him the whole thing.
Comes back again, my dear. You won't be here.
I hate you.
Whether you hate me or not.
Something wrong?
Your notes.
There's nothing wrong with those.
On your talks with Lucius.
Yes.
Oh, Lucius said he killed him, killed his father.
Oh, did he?
But it's in your notes.
Am I too late for tea or too early for a drink?
No, come in, John. Drusilla is going to read to us
Beatrix Potter?
the works of Charles Rose. Well, we're both sitting comfortably. You may begin.
April the 25th. Lucius suddenly said, brackets, exact words, brackets, do you know I killed my father? Sometimes I think you do. I asked him to explain. He said,
Brackets, exact words, brackets.
I am guilty of my father's death. I must be punished. Punish me. I told him punishment was not my province and that I couldn't even arrest him unless I had a reasonable case to present. That's the end of the note.
Yes, he left at that point.
Left?
Got up and walked out.
I thought she read it very well, though. Good, clear voice, lots of
But
expression.
why did you let him go?
You're beginning to understand why I call it one of my better failures.
Yes, oh, master.
Well, I don't understand. Nor why you deliberately break priceless statuettes and then pretend to be sorry. Or why you sent him off for stupid shopping lists.
Mr. Rose's humble servant speaking. Would you hold on? I'll ask him if he's in. Ransom.
Ah. Rose here.
Oh, I just thought I'd ring to say that... Well, yes, when I saw the statuette, of course, I was a bit, well, a bit shattered. But there it is. Accidents do happen. Lady Prentice wondered if you'd care to come over to dinner. Oh, good. I suppose tonight's too much to ask? Well, what about tomorrow?
Delighted. 8 o'clock. I shall look forward to that. Don't worry, Drusilla. You will not be left alone with John Halifax. He's not been invited, but I shall, of course, take him with me.
Yes, the large one has less potato.
Really? A delicious dinner.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry I couldn't compliment Mrs. Ransom on her mayonnaise.
Oh, yes. Poor Ursula. I'll tell her.
Yes, she was so looking forward
As
to...
indeed I was. I do hope she's not troubled often by migraine.
No, not often.
An unfortunate coincidence that it should happen this evening.
Yes?
As I was saying to someone only the other day, I don't believe in coincidences.
A coffee, Mr. Rose?
I wonder if you'd indulge a sudden whim of mine.
Well, yes, of course, if we can.
I find your museum such a fascinating place. Could we drink our coffee in there?
Yes, of course.
I want to call to Hampshire, please. Fairfield 208. No reply? Oh, well, would you try again in 5 minutes, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Like a brandy, Rose?
I think we should all have a brandy, don't you?
Why do you say that?
Lady Prentice, 2 years ago when I was investigating your husband's death,
Yes.
I formed certain notions which I could find no evidence to support.
Oh?
And I thought it better not to look too hard for that evidence.
What do you mean, Mr. Rose?
Now I think I was wrong. I think I should have followed those notions to the end, to the bitter end. But at least your son might still be alive.
Is it going to be a bitter end now, Mr. Rose?
I have looked a little harder for that evidence.
Felfield, 208.
Oh, Mr. Rose's secretary speaking. Would you give him a message for me, please? Professor Adderley can see him at 11 in the morning.
Yes, I'll tell him.
Professor Adderley will see me.
At 11 tomorrow.
Good.
Adderley has been here, of course.
Believing one thing, supposing he were to come here believing another.
Professor Adderley is a friend.
And the greatest living expert since Sir Gilbert's death. Lady Prentice, I believe in consequences. I believe that your husband's death was the consequence of his being offered the Order of Merit.
No.
The time lag. Sir Gilbert died 36 hours after. Now, when you've been offered the thing you want most in the world, does the letter remain unanswered for 36 hours?
But he was phrasing a letter of acceptance.
He knew that he could not accept it. Lucius told me that he'd killed his father.
Yes, he did.
Which started me thinking, what could kill Sir Gilbert?
Lucius stabbed him.
What could kill a great man at the height of his reputation? One thing could. Loss of that reputation. The world expected Sir Gilbert to return from each of his expeditions with a splendid new discovery. I don't know at what stage Sir Gilbert began giving the world what it wanted by using fakes and replicas.
That's not true. There's not a word of truth in that.
Who was responsible for this?
He was.
Thank you, Lady Prentice. And thank you, Mr. Ransom, for giving me the clue to the truth.
The statuette.
It could not have been genuine, or Lucius would never have used it knowing that it would break.
Mr. Rose, there are 3 people in this room who would do anything in the world to protect Sir Gilbert's reputation.
Literally anything.
If you make a single move with Adderley, or the press, or the police.
You'll kill me.
I told you I could convey simple messages to Arley. This message would be very simple. That man is your dead master's enemy. Kill that man!
That will be enough. Thank you, John.
Right.
I usually make notes, but this time I thought I'd like it on tape for my archives.
Want a playback?
When we get home.
Radio bug. American. They're very good. You should have one.
Thank you, John. Next job. Chop, chop.
Right.
Where's he going?
To fetch your wife. The door is locked, I imagine, with the key on the outside.
Yes.
Sir Gilbert naturally told you all about this offer of the Order of Merit. And Lucius went to him and said, you cannot accept because you are a fraud.
But it was only on the last dig. We hadn't found anything for so long. And Gilbert was broken-hearted and so very old.
It was for Gilbert's sake. He wanted so very much to be acclaimed.
The vanity of age.
Ah, no. His mind was beginning to wander. He didn't know what was going on, Mr. Rose, until Lucius told him.
And pronounced his father's doom and his own. When I heard that Lucius was trying to get in touch with me, I thought he wanted to tell me something. Now, I think I was wrong. I think he wanted to ask me something. He wanted to ask me, do you know how my father was killed? Because if you do, how can you live knowing that secret? Because I can't. Good evening, Mrs. Ransom.
What do you want me to tell you?
Mrs. Ransom, the first thing a woman does when she returns from shopping is to take that shopping out of the car. You hadn't. You had to buy it all again the next day, so in fact, you hadn't come back. You met Lucius on the way.
He asked me to give him a lift into Petersfield. We stopped at the top of the hill. We sat in the car and talked for a long time.
And then?
He said, Ursula, if you love me, get out of the car and start walking home and don't look back. So that's what I did.
Was he hoping to drive on or hoping to crash?
All I know is I did what he asked me. Because he said, if you love me.
Well, Mr. Rose, what are you going to do?
There's nothing to show that Lucius's death was anything other than an accident.
And Sir Gilbert?
I myself am something of a fraud. I never, in fact, got in touch with Professor Adderley.
But Sir Gilbert's death?
Do you know now how Gilbert was killed?
Yes.
Will you tell the police?
Or publish it?
The case will remain one of my failures.
But you mean you'll do nothing?
Since I can prove nothing, I can do nothing.
But how was Sir Gilbert killed? And who killed him? You said he couldn't have done it himself. And it wasn't Lucius. But he was the first on the scene.
Sir Gilbert died like a noble Roman.
Shall we act it for her?
Let's. Julius Caesar, Act 5, Scene 3. I am Cassius, you are Pindarus, my slave.
Typecasting again.
But of course. Come hither, sirrah. In Parthia did I take thee prisoner, and then I swore thee, saving of thy life, that whatsoever I did bid thee do, thou shouldst attempt it. Come now, keep thine oath. Now be a freeman. And with this good sword that ran through Caesar's bowels, search this bosom. Stand not to answer. Here, take thou the hilts. And when my face is covered as 'tis now, guide thou the sword. Except, of course, Sir Gilbert said it in sign language.